Check out flipsidegaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we're going to look at all things Standard, Modern, Legacy, and Commander as we do every week. Now, I will warn you ahead of time, Ixalan cards we will not see in this particular episode. Right now, they are still very turbulent as more packs are being opened, so I didn't want to include them on these lists because they would kind of dominate the list and push a lot of other notable cards off. So we will do a special edition of the Market Watch early this coming week where we look at Ixalan, and once they stabilize a little more, maybe another week or so, we'll go ahead and get them into the regular Market Watch. But today, for the Standard section, you're going to see just cards that were already existing in Standard. So with that being said, quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support the channel. You'll find our Patreon page linked below. We just added a new gift for patrons, a classic art treasure token, so check that out. You'll also see some links for Amazon products below. If you make any purchases on Amazon, once you go through our links, we'll get a small percentage back. And also, Flipside Gaming has offered a promo code for our viewers to get a discount. They're doing pre-orders now on Iconic Masters, among a whole lot of other stuff you can find there. So with that out of the way, let's get into the cards for today. We're going to start off, as we always do, with Standard. Top 5 cards that lost value this week. You're going to see some Hour Devastation cards on the list. Maybe not too surprising since they're saturating the market right now, but you'll find some other cards on the list too. Coming in number 5, Champion of Wits, down 31 cents to 309. So this is a card that actually is still seeing Standard play. It's in the Godfarrow's Gift decks, usually 4 of in those builds. And the deck's still hanging in there, still doing pretty good. But this continues to drop. One of the main reasons is because outside of that deck, it's not seeing any extensive play or anything like that. And it is a rare from Hour of Devastation. Again, they're just very abundant right now in the marketplace. Coming in at number 4, Hour of Devastation, down 33 cents to 288. So we've been talking about this card over the last couple weeks. It's a good board sweep, but unfortunately, red in the current meta isn't looking for this card. And the board sweeps that you do find in the meta are usually in white right now. Settle the Wreckage, of course, from Ixalan, and Fumigate are the more popular ones because they're in these Azorius control builds or these approach control builds. This one just unfortunately doesn't have a real true place right now. And again, it's also a rare from Hour of Devastation. That doesn't help either. Number 3, Liliana Death's Majesty, down 35 cents to 855. This card is not from Hour of Devastation. This one's from Amonkhet, but she's having a hard time finding a foothold in this new meta as well. She didn't have a whole lot of luck actually in the previous meta. She was originally showing up in some of the zombie builds, but she was sort of cycled out for Liliana the Last Hope most of the time as time went on with those builds. But you will find that sometimes she'll show up in Abzan token decks, but she's kind of getting phased out there by Vraska right now. So again, much like the last meta, she kind of started off maybe having a home, and it just feels like you're going to see less and less of her as time goes on. Number 2, Metallic Mimic, down 64 cents to 12.50. Okay, so this one's interesting. Tons of speculation on this card being good going into the Ixalan Standard because of the fact that, I mean, Ixalan is coming into Standard. It's bringing all of this tribal in with it. And how can this card not be good, right? Because it was even good previously in the zombie deck. So when you throw in all these tribal elements from Ixalan, this card's got to be good, right? Well, it's not really doing a whole lot. It is in cat decks. Cat decks have had some moderate success early on. But beyond that, the card's really not doing anything yet. I think some people are going to hang on to their copies until the Pro Tour happens in about 3 weeks, and just in case there's some crazy pirate deck or something like that that no one saw coming. But for the most part, this card is definitely in for a fall. It is a rare. A lot of copies of this have been open in Aether Revolt. So it is time for this to decline. 12.50 is just really, really high for a card that's seeing very little play right now. Coming in at number 1, Nicol Bolas, God, Pharaoh, down $1.45 to $13.37. Now, this is an Hour of Devastation card as well, but this one's a mythic. And unfortunately, Nicol Bolas not seeing a whole lot of play, sometimes here and there in like a Grixis control style deck or something like that. But for the most part, even the control decks are passing this by as they're moving on to Azorius colors and playing Approach and stuff like that. So, and when you do see this card, it is truly a 1 of, maybe a 2 of in a deck. It's not something that's a 3 or 4 of. So again, for the amount of play this is seeing, it's a cool card. It's a great commander card, which is probably why it's maintained its value this long, but this will continue to slide. All right, let's move on to the top 5 standard cards that have gained value this week. So last weekend we saw the World Championship, and it has skewed some prices on a couple of cards. You're going to see that definitely in today's list. But one thing I do want to point out about the World Championship, be really careful about trying to like net deck or something like that off of those deck lists, because it's a very unique meta. The players in that championship, they are creating decks around a small meta. A lot of times they know what each other, at least some of their friends are playing that are also in the tournament because they test together. And when you go to the World Championship, you're not going to test some sort of new deck the week before and try to play something that maybe did well a week ago when Star City Games open, right? You're going to go for tried and true decks that have been tweaked. So we saw a lot of decks from the previous meta. Because of that, there's more attention on some of the singles from cards from the previous meta. Coming in number 5, Chandra Torch of Defiance, up 86 cents to 39.05. So this is a good example of a card that was highlighted in the World Championship this past weekend due to decks like Ramanap Red, some of the energy decks. Now, this was a card that was a darling of the last meta. Is she going away? No, she's absolutely not going away. She's a great card. Ramanap Red is still a very good deck, and that's not going to change in this meta. But she does have a little extra attention on her this week due to the fact that she saw play in the tournament last weekend. Number 4, Herald of Anguish, up 91 cents this week to 5.29. Now, this, of course, is part of the improvised deck, which had some good early results in this new forming standard meta. So we'll have to see where this goes over the course of the next few weeks. The deck seems really sweet. It's captured a lot of players' attentions. And even if long-term it doesn't have the same results as some of the other decks, I think this will still be popular among a lot of casual players. You'll see a lot of people sleeving this up on Friday nights for Friday Night Magic. Number 3, Anointed Procession, up $1.24 to $8.16. So I alluded to this earlier, but there is an Abzan Tokens deck that is having some success right now in Magic Online for Standard. So a lot of players are looking at that deck, and this week this card went up a little bit, being a key part of that. Number 2, Botanical Sanctum, up 213 to 839. Well, mana bases are a big part of the changing meta. So, of course, whenever you're going to see a major rotation like this, there are going to be some key lands that will go up in value, this being one of them. This has been a key card in a lot of the new versions of the energy decks, like the 4-color and Sultai decks that we saw have a lot of success up until this point. Coming in number 1, Hezret the Fervent, up 343 to 1840. So, yep, Hezret's back on our list, actually back at number 1. And again, like I said earlier, Ramanap Red is awesome. Still a great deck, still a great choice to bring to any tournament, any standard tournament. But again, it got some extra spotlight this weekend thanks to the World Championship. All right, let's move on to Modern with the cards that have lost value this week. Now, you're going to notice that Modern is a little bit slower right now. The ups and downs are a lot more conservative than they've been over the last few months, and that's normal as people are kind of bracing for Iconic Masters. A lot of people are already thinking about Masters 25, even though that's still a little ways away in March. It's really not that far away. So a lot of the big ticket cards are starting to soften a little bit, especially the ones we know are going to be in Iconic Masters. You'll see a number of them here. Number 5, Engineered Explosives, down 209 to 52.15. This is the Modern Masters version of the card. This card is going down just a little bit considering its overall value, so maybe not too surprising that this card is softening just a tad bit because it spiked really hard a few months ago and we never really saw a significant snapback from it, so I think this is just normal stabilization for this one. Number 4, Shared Animosity, down 233 to 1594. This one's interesting. This card has been super hot ever since Commander 2017 decks were coming out, and of course Ixalan was coming out. There were so many tribal elements that were coming in new Magic products that this caught a lot of people's attention. And over the course of the last couple weeks, it started to soften a little bit as people got their copies and such, but Morningtide Rares, they tend to be explosive because they have lower print runs, so this is maybe no surprise that we saw this card kind of take off the way it did. So it's on its way down, not only because players have their copies now, especially the Commander players, but there was an announcement this week by Wizards where they talked about Explorers of Ixalan. I did a video on it if you want more details, but long story short, it's a box set, much like Nicobolas Arch Enemy that came out a few months back. Comes with 4 60-card decks, and it has another kind of extra play element to it. But guess what? There's actually some notable reprints in here, this being one of them, maybe one of the more notable ones along with Time Warp. But this card is being reprinted in that box set, and because of that, it's taken a hit this week. Number 3, Ether Vial from Modern Masters, down 254 to 39.91. Well, we know this one is going to be in Iconic Masters, so because of that, it's taking the hit this week. Number 2, Tarmogoyf from Modern Masters 2015, down 262 to 74.94. So we've been talking about this for a number of weeks now. Goyfs are a little bit soft. They're seeing less percentage of field play in Modern. However, I have seen some indications that Jund is starting to creep back into the scene a little bit. I think maybe some of the Death Shadow players may be getting bored with that deck, thinking about going out to something a little different, going back to Jund perhaps, I don't know. But the deck definitely has had a few good results here and there, and I do think it might start to gain momentum again. If that's the case, the Goists will probably solidify, maybe even start to increase. So this is definitely a card to watch. Now, it is notable, though, this is the Modern Masters 2015 version. I've said this before in these videos, but if I'm going to buy a copy of Goif, especially online, I'm probably going to steer clear of this one because they had a lot of printing issues with this particular set, especially in foils. And coming in at number 1, Ancestral Vision, down 390 to 35.50. This is from Time Spiral, and this is another card that we know is being reprinted in Iconic Masters at Rare. It does have new art this time around, although I really like the original art quite a bit, but the new art does look sweet too. But because of all this, the card is going down this week. Alright, let's look at the cards that have gained value this week. Coming in at number 5, Horizon Canopy, up $1.26 to $79.32. Okay, this is in Iconic Masters as a rare, and this is the second week in a row that it's been going up in value. So what is going on with Horizon Canopy? Well, here's the deal. We've never really seen a situation like this before, where we know what's in a master set so far ahead of time. So even though, yes, the value of this has gone down since we found out it was in there, but players still need to play Magic. So if I'm going to a big Modern tournament or something like that, I might just have to bite the bullet and buy my Horizon Canopies a little more than I would pay a few weeks, a couple months down the road, for example. So it kind of is what it is for those players. Now, if you shop around a little bit, there are some sellers starting to get nervous and trying to liquidate a little bit, so you can find better deals than $79.32. Just shop around. So that's true of probably all of these cards that are being reprinted in Iconic Masters. But just generally, the card is very popular. It's a key part of mana bases in so many decks in Modern as well as Legacy. So it just kind of is what it is with this one. And another thing, compared to other cards we looked at, like maybe Ancestral Vision or something like that, this card was from Future Sight. Future Sight had a really low print run comparatively to other sets around that time period, especially compared to sets today. And because of that, those cards tend to be explosive. This one has the Future Sight special border, also has unique art compared to what we're going to be seeing in Iconic Masters. So it does mean some players might feel a little more comfortable just spending the extra money on this one if they need to do it anyway, as opposed to waiting, just because this card will always hold a little more value. I mean, look at the Future Sight Tarmogoyf as a good example of that. Number 4, Celestial Colonnade, up $1.32 to $38. Now, this is the second week in a row this card has been going up. This card really could use a reprint. I'm hoping to see maybe these World Wake creature lands show up perhaps in Masters 25. That would be nice, but I guess we'll wait and see. But the reason this has been so hot is because some of these control decks have been doing pretty well recently in Modern. Jeskai Control, Azorius Control, this being, of course, a key part of them. Number 3, Scapeshift, up $1.39 this week to $57.25. This is a card that's been creeping up pretty gradually over the last few weeks, ever since it was revealed that it was not in Iconic Masters. Hopefully it shows up in Masters 25. It is a key part, of course, the Titan Shift decks, and it's a Morningtide rare, so it just really could use a reprint. Number 2, Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, up $1.91 to $25.99. This is the Modern Masters 2015 version. I think that's the key here. This version of the card has always felt a little undervalued to me, so it seems like maybe it's just going up a little bit due to that fact. Now, the card itself has seen less and less play over the years. It used to be a bigger part of like the Tron decks and Modern, as well as some of the Legacy Eldrazi decks, but kind of got nudged out of both of those decks for the most part. I mean, it still sees play here and there in different deck lists, but for the most part, there's other cards that people have been running, but it's still a great casual card, awesome for cubes. Number 1, Quicksilver Fountain, up $2.30 this week to $3.99. I mean, financially, not a huge increase, but it is a big percentage increase. So this one's interesting. It has been showing up in a couple Modern builds on Magic Online, actually. There is a Tezzeret deck that was running one of these in the sideboard, and there's actually this quirky sort of landlocked deck that has had some moderate success on Magic Online. Of course, it's a bigger part of that deck than the Tezzeret deck. So I think because of that, this card's seeing a little bit of interest this week. Now, I also highlighted this card a few days ago in our Picks of the Month video, and I don't know if that had anything to do with this, but I highlighted it more as a commander card, as just a really fun commander card. But I don't know if I have that much impact on the market, and I hope I don't, but inevitably I'm sure that day could come, so I have to be careful. But anyway, Quicksilver Fountain, Really cool pickup. It's still cheap enough if you haven't picked one up. All right, let's move on to the legacy cards that have lost value this week. Now, you will find here that a lot of the buyouts we were seeing over the last couple months have tapered off a little bit. They've slowed down quite a bit, and you're going to see some surprising things, actually, I think, in this list. All the cards we're going to look at in the cards that are losing value are Arabian Nights cards. Most of them were recently targets of buyouts. Looks like a lot of them are now being reintroduced into the marketplace. Coming in number 5, Ali from Cairo, down 14.10 to 165. So this is another card that was featured a few months back in one of our pick of the month videos. And at that time, the card was around $50, $60, if I recall. So it felt really undervalued. And it went up after that, but it went up gradually. It didn't feel like a buyout target like a lot of the cards we're going to see on the list today. So I think this could be normal stabilization, actually, for the card. Number 4, City in a Bottle, down $15 to $222.50. Okay, here's the first card that was definitely a target of a buyout recently, and it appears that maybe they're starting to come back into the marketplace. Number 4, Diamond Valley, down $35.98 to $354. Second verse, same as the first. Diamond Valley was a big target of a buyout recently, and value starting to come back down. Number 2, Pyramids, down $81.46 to $94.52. Another key buyout card, which is coming down really, really fast right now. This was another one that was featured in that Picks of the Month video, the one with Ali from Cairo. At that time, this card was really low. It was something like $10 or something like that, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the card was super cheap, and recently somebody took advantage of that, definitely. But the cards are already starting to come back down. Coming in number 1, Surrender Be Free, down $95.96 to $278.87. First card on the list today that's not on the reserve list, but this Arabian Nights card was hot regardless, and it was definitely a target of a buyout. So just goes to show you, especially when you're looking at rare cards like Arabian Nights, it doesn't even matter sometimes if they're reserve list cards. People will still buy them out, and the price will inflate, even though you can find a lot of cheaper versions of this card out there. You can find versions of this card very, very cheap, as a matter of fact, if you just want to play with it. But this isn't about that. This is about the collectability of the card, and that's what we saw here. Now, fortunately, these are being reintroduced now to the market. We're seeing the price come back down. All right, let's move on to the cards that have gained value this week in Legacy. Coming in number 5, Ernham Jin, up $13.38 to $4.30. This is another Arabian Nights card that was bought out that is not on the reserve list. If you want a copy, you can find a cheaper one, of course, a much, much cheaper one. But this one has been going up the last few weeks. This is probably the tail end of the height of this particular value. I think at this point we'll start to see these sold back into the market and the value will drop, much like the other cards we saw on the list today. Number 4, Nicol Bolas, up $17.91 to $54.99. This, of course, is the Legends version. All these gold Legends have been super hot recently, and no surprise that Nicol Bolas is being caught up in that. Now, this is a nice little increase. I don't know if it feels like a buyout to me, or if it's just that people are noticing these gold cards now and trying to pick up ones before they get bought out. I think that could be happening with this one. Now, I do want to point out, this is not a reserve list card. You can find cheaper versions of this card out there, like Chronicles, for example. But for the folks that want the original, yeah, the price has gone up a little bit this week. Number 3, Nether Void, up $18.14 to $465.98. This is another card that probably is at the tail end of its high buyout price and will probably start coming down in another week or so. Number 2, Nebuchadnezzar, up $20.48 to $26.50 from Legends. Another gold card, another card that feels like maybe a buyout this time around. This is a very, very high spike for this particular card. And it's a cool commander card, definitely, but ultimately this feels unnatural. This isn't your normal growth curve. And another card that is not on the reserve list, you can find a Chronicles version real cheap if you just want one. Number 1, City of Brass. Another card not on the reserve list, up $83.56 to $348.55 this week. And City of Brass, even though, yes, you can find cheaper copies of it, the original just super hot. And again, it feels like this has been a target of a buyout recently, and we're probably reaching the higher end of the buyout at this point. Could go up a little more maybe next week, but then I would expect this to start coming down again. All right, let's move on to a few notable commander cards for the week. These are just a few cards that I wanted to showcase because I noticed there was some movement in them. All 4 of these are actually pretty interesting for commander players, though. First is Didgeridoo, and this one is from Homelands. It's actually a reserve list card. It's up 32 cents this week to 8.23. It went up a little bit last week too, so there is this trend of this card just going up in value. Now, a couple things I want to point out. It's a Homelands card. This is much different than Arabian Nights reserve list cards or even Legends or Antiquities reserve list cards. A lot of these were printed, so don't get it twisted. This isn't a card that anybody should think about going out trying to like buy out or anything like that. But this card is actually pretty interesting for commander purposes when it comes to Minotaurs, and we recently saw some more interest in this card back when we saw Minotaurs making a comeback a couple sets ago. So I thought that was kind of cool that this card maybe could get some second life in the future, especially if we got like a Minotaur that has some really good powers attached to it. This card could become really sought after for commander at that point. Next is Olivia Valderin. She's up 83 cents to 7.72. This is the Innistrad version. Now, last week we featured the Modern Masters 2017 version, which was pretty hot, so I wanted to check in on this one. And yeah, this one's going up as well. And again, this is mostly due to Commander play. This is a great upgrade for the Commander 2017 Vampire deck, if nothing else. Skizrith, the Blight Dragon, is up a little bit this week, up $1.23 to $21.35. Now, this card does see play sometimes as a one-of and a sideboard for like ad nauseum build, stuff like that, but that's not why this is going up in value this week. This, again, is because of its commander playability. Another good upgrade for Commander 2017 deck, this time the Dragon deck. Finally, we have Sustaining Spirit, up $2.75 this week to $3.79. This is a reserve list card from Alliances. Pretty nice increase when you're looking at percentage of its value this week. So someone's noticing this card. Now, yes, it is a reserve list card, but it is Alliances. So much like my warning with Homelands, it's not a card that I feel like most people would think would be lucrative to try to buy out. So I don't think this is a buyout. At least I hope it's not. But ultimately, it's a good commander card. You see this a lot of times in Pillow Fort decks and some decks that are running Solemnity. So Solemnity, of course, being a newer strategy, this card is great with it because of the cumulative upkeep. But even if you're not doing that, it's still decent in like Pillow Fort decks. All right, with that being said, those are the cards for today. So pretty interesting stuff. I mean, it's a little bit slower than it's been, especially in the world of Legacy and Modern, but I think that's to be expected as people turn their attention right now to Standard, and they want to see what's happening in Standard. And typically this would be like Pro Tour weekend, but because of the new schedule, it's another 3 weeks away. So players are still going to be kind of trying to figure out things for themselves, watching some of the other bigger tournaments, watching Magic Online to try to figure out where the meta is going, and then we'll have the Pro Tour happen. So I'm a little bit curious to see what the Pro Tour looks like. Well, we kind of know what to expect more so than ever because we have more time with the cards, or will there still be surprises that lead to big spikes? I guess we'll find out in a few weeks. That's something to watch for. Also, like I mentioned at the top of the show, if you're interested in Ixalan specifically, we are going to do a special market watch early this coming week where we just look at Ixalan. Hopefully those prices will start to stabilize a little bit, another week or so, and I can work them into the regular market watch. But at least for another week, I wanted to keep them separate because they were very turbulent. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.